Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another OSR tabletop live stream with DM Bloodworth. So, once again, I'm doing another impromptu live stream. However, this is going to change in the near future, probably as early as next week, where this is going to be a regularly scheduled live stream feature on my channel. And this will be broadcast, of course, onto Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And that will allow me to actually start to structure the program a little bit better and actually come up with some topics that I will then reveal on Sunday night, so that you will know what's coming up on Wednesday. It'll also allow me to schedule any special guests to bring on to the onto the show, and also be able to reveal who those special guests will be. I am expecting a couple of guests today, so we'll see as they come on. The other thing I wanted to do to set this up and to set up this new feature is to actually deal with or unpack my definition of OSR. And so I will begin doing that now. And for the next couple of sessions, that's what I'll do in a pre-show. So that'll run probably from 11:15 to 11:30, and then I'm planning on these live streams going for about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on what the topics of the day will be, or how many guests I may have scheduled to appear. So I see the comment. So back he is from the pits of chaos. Yes, I am back from the pits of chaos. I was banned on YouTube for being able to directly live stream to YouTube for about a month. So that being said, let me get into the OSR and what it means to me and the definition that I work with. So let me put this here. So what is the OSR? First, we must define what is old school. All right. And I am working with the definition of old school, anything prior to 1990 or anything 30 plus years old. Now, I came to this realization a couple of years ago when I'm driving in my car and I turn on, the morning oldies station just out of curiosity. And I put it on there, and all of a sudden, Motley Crue, Kickstart My Heart comes on. And I said to myself, this is the oldies station. So it suddenly struck me that I'm getting freaking old when the music of my teen years is playing on an oldies station. And I think that's fine for us to start looking at the tabletop role-playing hobby in that same view, right? So anything 30 years or older is old school. And I think that as we go further ahead, I know some modern players might find this shocking, but by 2040 or 2050, fifth edition is going to be old school. It's going to be part of the OSR, and that might shock them. They'll have the same realization that I did when Motley Crue played on the Morning Oldies channel. So old school, basically anything prior to 1990, anything 30 years old. That's what I'm working with. So it's the R that has different definitions, and I'm going to get to that next. So the R, for me, again, my opinion, stands for role-playing, Renaissance, and revival. So let me unpack those three as well. Old school role-playing games are games played in a more traditional way, such as like dungeon crawlings and hex crawls and that kind of thing. games that relied heavily on role playing and you playing less off your character sheet and more just in like the theater of your mind. It might be using um, pencil and graph paper and graphing, everything out as you go. A real equipment economy kind of model where you're like who has the 10-foot pole, who has the oil flask, how many oil flasks do you have, just that real old school uh economy of gameplay that took place, that are more reliance on role playing rather than what is specifically on your character sheet, because your characters in old school games tended to have less features tied to the actual character. And if you go really, really old school, you're going back to the original Dungeons and Dragons. You even had like class as character and that kind of thing. So that old school feel is also something that I think is really important for old school role playing. And then we have our first guest coming in. So I'll take a break from my little synopsis there, or breakdown of what OSR is. Good morning, Miguel.
Hi.
It's afternoon for you, though.
Yeah.
So
Good afternoon. Good after morning.
yeah, so good afternoon to you. And so Miguel is coming over from Red Room Games, so publishing. I invited him to come on to give some of his perspective as a publisher of OSR games. Um, how he actually sees his games fitting within the OSR, and then also about some of his projects, because I do have a question of the day that I'm going to get to after I go through my definition of OSR. So if you don't mind, Miguel, you could jump in at any time. But I just finished what old school role playing meant for me. I'm going to hit Renaissance and Revival and then get to the 2024 question that I was going to bring up. So, old school Renaissance for me, again, refers to a more modern game that is a derivative of an older published game or game system. These are often called retro clones. Um, and these are pretty common for what you see in the OSR. So you'll see various, like white hack and black hack and, um, you know, hacks of or retro clones of whether it be D&D or Rollmaster, or it could be multiple different systems that fall within old school Renaissance. And that's a point that I make later on as to what is not the OSR. And I'll make that point now. The OSR isn't just derivatives of Dungeons and Dragons. The OSR, can be based on any of those old school game systems that I've already referred to or will continue to refer to as well. Um, Miguel, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I wasn't. A few years ago, I wasn't aware that I was old school because I wasn't aware of the use of the term. But I am obviously I am old school because I started playing at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. Though I didn't play games that are considered old school for long, because I changed for other stuff like Vampire and Cult and well, some other stuff. But yeah, I agree with that. It's a the term the OSR is a bit difficult to find a definition for it. And there
Mhm.
are some games nowadays. I think there are some things that you can uh, think about it as probably not really old school, not really OSR, but they are using it, they are labeling it as OSR because it's still fashionable to call a game OSR. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
going to name names, but there
yeah,
are
yeah.
some.
No, I can definitely see that OSR has become a label that some people might believe that this will sell my product, because there is a draw to OSR, and that's a recent change, I think as well. Um, I'm not. I only recently returned back to the hobby. When I say recently, 2015 is when I came back to the tabletop hobby, um, departing MMORPGs and a lot of computer RPGs at the time, and when I came back, I wasn't really familiar with OSR yet either. I returned back to playing, um, you know, one or two modern games, but really I came back to playing D&D Basic. First it was Beckme, and then I went back to playing AD&D First Edition. I had dabbled a little bit with D&D 5e. It wasn't much to my taste. I didn't like basically the mechanics. And then once I realized that the best game masters that I had for 5e were throwing out most of the modern rules and making it more like playing AD&D, that I was like, well, then why not just play AD&D? And so that's what I reverted back to, both playing and then certainly running. So, but the old school Renaissance, I started realizing, well, hey, you know what? I didn't at the time presently have a copy of the Holmes edition of Dungeons and Dragons, but there was Blue Home, which basically captures that same, feel and 90% of the mechanics, of the Holmes edition. And so I got Blue Home before I found a reasonably priced copy of the Holmes edition, and then I bought that. So Renaissance, once again, is, it literally means rebirth, and it's a rebirth of those older game systems just packaged in a new, modern way with some modern mechanics. And I don't know what the exact percentage is. 90% can be old, or maybe even 95% could be the old system, and only 5% um, needs to be with a twist, a modern twist, or your own take on it. So that for me is what the Renaissance is. It's basically a retro clone of any game system. So let me get to the last one, and this is where I really see myself mostly, is old school revival. So old school revival refers to playing the actual older game systems or editions, even when there's a newer editions are available. All right. So like I said, I play AD&D First Edition, even though there's Second Edition, which is still old school, Second Edition, Third, Fourth, and Fifth, and whatever you want to call what they're working on now, whether that be D&D 1 or D&D D&D 6th edition or 3.5, whatever they decide to call it. I probably still continue playing AD&D First Edition because that's my preference, and not a reflection of whether one is better than another. That's largely, again, taste and preference rather than something that's measurably better or worse than the other. Anything on that?
I think I would place myself on the Renaissance, of course.
Yes.
I'm not playing anything that old right now. Well, of course, right now I can't really play anything else because I don't have the time for that.
Yeah.
I'm just writing and doing some play testing, so I can't play anything else. I have a backlog, a huge backlog now, and I really can't. There's no time. No time, and also not enough people to play because I have. I'm doing this full time right now, so I have more time for this, but the other people don't. so I can just
Right.
ask, I can demand, okay, well, you must have time to play other stuff because I want to. So there's no way to do that. So I have to push things there, and then I'll wait for some other time to play them. There are several games I have there. Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I have
Mhm.
several games there. The Genesis, that game that apparently it's not dead after all. Apparently
Mhm.
it came back. Um, a huge game with a huge setting, and I can play that. And I recently bought Call of Cthulhu Second Edition, that box set, the smaller one, not the big one.
Yeah.
That's something I would like to play again because I haven't played Call of Cthulhu since, I don't know, 15 years ago, man. Well, probably more than that,
Right.
and probably more stuff there. Yes, certainly Child also.
Yeah.
Uh, the Invisible College, the Pandit's Invisible
Mhm.
College. That's a huge volume also. I can't
Yeah.
prepare that thing, and it has to be prepared. I don't have Pandit's knowledge about magic and all that, so I would have to prepare it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And like I said, I mean, I picked up that same Call of Cthulhu box set because
I
that's
know.
the one I played back then, So, I was a
I
second
never played
edition
that one.
player. Yeah.
It's
So
one
uh
or two editions after.
yeah. And from what I understand, I mean, I haven't actually sat down and compared seventh edition with second edition, to see how much really changes, between the two. But I've always heard positive things about every edition of Call of Cthulhu. So it's not like they ever produced something that was a real dud. It was always seen as like an improvement upon the older. But I'd like to see how it actually compares. Um, the one game I've been looking at a lot lately, and this is an OSR game. It has that old school role playing feel to it. That's what makes it an OSR. It is also derivative of Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm talking about Castles and Crusades. And I can see the connection to old school, AD&D, but it is so streamlined and formatted differently that it really does play differently than AD&D, but it still retains that same essence or feel to it, And so that's kind of a mixture of the two. It's both Renaissance and role playing, as far as my definition goes. So it has both the attachment to the past, the playability of the past, and the essence of the past, but it's a modern game and has modern day, mechanics to it. Plus, all of the advances that we have in formatting and layout and art and such. Which, I mean, that's one of the things I'm really impressed about. Your games and what both you and Sylvia put out there. I mean, just the layout of your games, and the even the paper texture that you put in some of your products is just mind-boggling how really cool it looks. And
Yeah,
that's a real modern thing. It's like if you compare old school games to what you guys are doing there. um I mean, you just tell that yours is a modern game. And all of the, it's print heavy. I mean, I'm not
yeah.
saying it's printer friendly, what I'm saying,
Well,
but
the best thing is to buy it through
yeah, buy
already
buy
print.
the physical copy. Yeah,
Yeah,
buy the
yeah,
physical copy.
it would be much cheaper.
But yeah, just beautiful stuff that you guys are putting out. And I have no doubt you have no time to play anything else but
No,
all
it
the
takes a lot of
writing,
time. Yeah,
because you
doing the
guys
layout.
are, both you and Sylvia are just churning out stuff like crazy. I mean,
Yeah, lately it has been a lot of.
so I'm sure you had a backlog. You had to
Yeah,
have like
yeah,
a huge backlog, and
yeah,
so you
yeah.
know,
Last year I wrote a lot.
yeah,
This year I haven't written anything. Well, just small things, but most of it was just layouts. Because well, doing layouts takes some time also.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's a skill and a talent that I will never possess. It's like
Well, apparently, I'm better at doing layouts than anything else.
yeah. So
But I started recently. But
yeah.
I think I had a knack for that kind of thing. I like to draw, and I'm not a good drawer. I don't. I
Hmm.
am not a good artist, but I liked it for a long
Right.
time. So there was some backstory for that.
All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift to the topic of what this live stream was going to be on, and I am talking specifically about 2024. All right, and this is my thesis, right? 2024 is an important anniversary for all of tabletop role playing games, and not just Dungeons and Dragons. So, what does the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, or in general, the real commercial, the first commercial success of tabletop role playing games, what does that have like as an impact on you and what you're looking to do?
Well, it's the first time I'm thinking about it, so
Mhm.
it will. I'll have to come up with an answer while I'm answering.
Okay.
Well, certainly the 5 decades are important for any role-playing game, because even though there were some other games before Dungeons and Dragons, it was obviously it's the game everybody knows.
Yeah.
A few years ago in Portugal, most people wouldn't identify a role-playing game. Now I think people already know, because it appears on TV shows and movies. But it's always Dungeons and Dragons. So for most people, role-playing games is Dungeons and Dragons. So there's no way to escape from that. So of course there's a connection. And 5 decades is a lot of time, a long time, because well, I wasn't born when when it was published. I was born in '75, so
Hmm.
I'm a bit younger than the game. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about it, but something must be done. I think something special, probably, as a publisher, certainly. As a gamer, I don't think so, because well, we don't have conventions here. So there's just one, so there's not much to do here around here as an
Well,
organized things.
yeah, you should do like Venture Satanis did and organize your own and get it started.
So it would be, you know, that the Portuguese gaming community is a bit woke,
Yeah.
so I don't think it would have a success here. It would be successful, uh, and well, there's lots of people who only play Dungeons and Dragons. I think there are also vampire players, and I think those communities are just they don't play other stuff. They just play the same thing and don't try other stuff. And then there are the story games people. Lots of
Hmm.
people who are playing story games. So I'm not sure if there would be room for another convention, because the one there is, it's a generic convention. But I think it's also not just role playing games; it's board games and role playing games and probably card games. I'm not sure about that. So
Right.
it's they couldn't, because there's well, Portugal has 10 million inhabitants. That's, I think,
Mhm.
New York, right?
Right.
The
Yeah,
US.
that's like New York City, basically. Yeah.
So it's a small country,
Yeah.
uh, and maybe there are less players here than in New York City. I think.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, probably, I guess.
It's
Um,
it's role playing is much more popular in the US than here. So it's a small community, and there's no room here for more than one, probably. Maybe there will be room for two. I'm not sure about that, but perhaps.
yeah,
But yeah,
so in like Portugal and everything, I guess the biggest one in your region, it's not even in your country, but I guess it would be like the UK Expo or something
probably
along
yes.
those lines, which is
Uh,
basically like the
Perhaps
European
in
Gen
France, but
Con.
I don't speak French, so I don't know. Well, I speak
Hmm.
very little French. But yeah,
Yeah,
the most known, the one I know best is it's the UK. Yeah,
yeah.
probably. I'm not sure about the rest of Europe. Probably there are in Italy, I think. maybe even in Spain. That I think I know that in Spain there are more role players, and they have
Hmm.
some. There's an industry in Spain, but they mostly publish in Spanish, so it's not that known in the world
Yeah,
because I've well I can read Spanish, but I don't really like to because I read it like very slowly. It's
yeah,
it's a bit
yeah.
annoying. I can understand it as most Portuguese people can understand a bit of
Right,
Spanish, but not we can't read it fluently like we're reading Portuguese.
right.
They have interesting games. The Spanish have interesting games. I don't know if they have conventions as well. Probably they have. Certainly.
Yeah, I think it's probably pretty small.
Yeah.
Like you said, like you're saying, and I mean, I know of the UK Expo, and I've never been there and never, probably never will, and such. I believe Germany has a,
Oh yeah, there's such
has a larger, community, and um, I think that there's more publishers in Germany than there are, you know, um, than there are in like France or Spain or, obviously Portugal or, I don't know about the UK. I mean, the UK has the two big ones. They have Podifius um, and Warhammer if they're still publishing. I can never quite figure out if Games Workshop still publishes or they just run their shops. So
yeah,
it's
but
like
Modifius is a large one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think Modifius is probably the largest out of the UK. But anyway, and I actually bring them up. I bring up, what should 2024 mean for, all of these big publishers and then for the OSR, as well. So let me move on to that next one. So these are my thoughts about what Wizards of the Coast should do, or at least what I would like to see them to do. So I think as part of their celebration of the 50th anniversary, that Wizards of the Coast, since they own the IP, should do an anniversary hardback volume of the three white box booklets and a second hardback, probably in like a slipcase for two of them of the four supplements. So really, just take the white box and its supplements and produce them in a newly typed up, newly formatted, newly laid out presentation in hardback of the books in anniversary style, 50th anniversary style. So um, that's what I think that they should do in order to truly honor the 50th anniversary, and to truly honor the IP that have they have the fortune and even luxury of owning. So that's something that I would like to see Wizards of the Coast do. Doubt that they would, but that's something that would be a real, I think it would sell. I think it would sell like hotcakes, to be honest with you, especially if they didn't just do a scan of the originals and like a print on demand, because you can get that on print
Yeah,
on
that's true.
demand. I think that they should actually dedicate the 6 months that it would probably take to to you know reproduce it, uh, you know, type it up fresh, format it fresh and do a new layout of it, and then put it out there. Of course, without the disclaimer that they put
Yeah,
on,
I
on
don't think they
drive
could do
through, but that would be the. I think that would be the smart thing to do. I think it would be the classy thing to do, and you know and I think that they would make a good deal of money from it too. I think it would sell. I think it would sell um widely, based on the fact that it is the 50th anniversary, and that's what any D&D player, but also any tabletop role player out there would be like, hey, I'm gonna grab a hold of this thing, and I just think that would be the smart thing to do. Don't think that they'll do it, but it
Yeah,
would be the
probably
smart
not.
thing to do. Let's see what else. Wizards of the Coast, I think that they will publish their latest edition. I'm going to call it an edition because after looking at just the first playtest, and dealing with what it does with character generation, I can already see Tasha's being incorporated into the core of the rule books. Before it was a supplement, before it was something you could disregard, and now it's being put in there as as the core rules. And Tasha's and everything after Tasha's, I really see as 5.5. I think that the real tone of the game and the direction of the game moved from its original 2014 through 2019, and Tasha's comes in at 2019 and dramatically alters the character creation of the game, and with its fluid racial attributes and racial traits, and now a halfling isn't a halfling anymore. A halfling is whatever you want to make a halfling. And in D&D 1, halfling could be 7 foot tall. It's like there's no racial or species or whatever you want to call it. There's no um, purpose in having any of them other than just to say, well, my character's an elf, but I have all of the traits of a dwarf, and all of the features of something else. They remove half elf and half orc, so I guess they got away from you know the possibilities of how those two half races came about. Um and it just, to me, it's not compatible with 5e, and that's something that's been pretty uniform across most of the commentators out there, is that what they've put out so far is barely compatible, and some have actually said it's not compatible with 5e. um, and compatibility isn't what they say it is. Compatibility is what you can bring to the table. So if I bring my 5e player's handbook to a new 1 D&D table, are they going to say, oh no, you can't use that? If I try to come to the table with a half elf, let's say, oh no, that race doesn't exist in the new edition any longer, and you can't use that. To me, compatibility comes down to what individual DMs are going to allow at their tables, especially in things like convention play or organized play. All right, and what Wizards of the Coast is going to put down, out on their D&D Beyond, because now they have control over what the content is digitally. I'll let you jump in if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, well, I would say that if it's not compatible, it's a new edition.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think also. And if they are changing so much, it has to be called a new edition. It's not just an iteration or a half edition or something.
Yeah, and that's the first thing that starts to fall apart, is that compatibility. Is and I don't know why they would have come out and said, "Oh, this is going to be completely compatible." I mean, I know why they said it's going to be completely, compatible, because they don't want to scare people off, and say, "Well, I'm just not going to follow through with it." They're going to let this idea trickle down, over time as they're releasing these play tests. But I think the realization is going to sink into the most ardent, supporter of 5e, and they're going to start realizing, hey, wait a second, I can't come to the table with my 5e player's handbook. All right, I'm going to have to get this new digital, this new digital format of it, and either print it out or buy a new hardcover, because it's not going to match up. And the other thing is that the going to a digital format as being their primary delivery. I know they say we're still going to produce hardbacks, but they're going to make the digital assets almost indispensable for playing Dungeons and Dragons in the future, as they consolidate their hold on the various communities. Now I know you have a lot going on with self-publishing, and publishing with One Bookshelf and such, and a lot going on over these things. And uh, what's your prediction of what would happen to a drive through, or any of the other DMs Guild or such, when WotC does truly consolidate into their own publishing?
So does that mean that they will only sell through their own stores? That's
Oh, yes. That the only way to get digital assets for D&D Beyond is to buy directly from Wizards of the Coast. Or
Mhm.
even so, if you buy a hardcover from Wizards of the Coast, you will get the digital codes to have direct access to
Okay.
D&D
So
Beyond
that's
and
like
their tabletop platform. All right, which means that you won't get that digital compatibility if you buy it from One Bookshelf,
mhm.
which means that that's going to dry up. There's no and why would Wizards of the Coast want that competition to begin with? They might pull their license from One Bookshelf and say, no, if you want D&D products, digital products, you're better off buying it from here, because that's your only direct line to our virtual tabletop as well. All right, which is a shot at Roll20 as well. It's kind of like a double shot across the bows of both One Bookshelf and Roll20, or any other virtual tabletop
Yeah.
that's currently carrying licensed, 5e product.
That seems like a large blow. If they lose even if they don't lose the older
Mm-hmm.
editions, but people will certainly. We know how this is. People like to buy into the new thing.
Mm-hmm.
So all those new gamers are going to start playing the new edition, and will forget about fifth edition and fourth edition and third edition and all that.
Right.
So I believe that will be they should start working on that. Well, probably they are working on that now, to find a way to replace it, because if that is possible, I have no idea what's the volume of business that they will lose if D&D starts just selling on their own platform. But I don't know, it will be a lot, probably. But
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that. I mean, drive through in particular, even though they do have an expansive catalog that is not D&D related, but D&D is probably, or 5e, let's say, is probably more than 50% of their overall. Um, Now, I know that they recently combined with Roll20, maybe in anticipation
yeah, so
of
that makes
either
sense.
either trying to make their combination appealing for Hasbro to purchase, because it wouldn't be Wizards of the Coast purchasing it, be Hasbro purchasing it and then transferring it over to Wizards of the Coast Digital. So maybe that's what they're doing, or they're trying to, anticipate the eventual pulling of the license and trying to shore up their own, hub of a place for people to go for both their virtual tabletop and their access to compatible and connected digital, PDF materials and such. So, yeah, and that's again, that's something that I think 2024 is going to be hugely important for the tabletop hobby in general. It's not just a celebration of the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, but I think it's a real important milestone for the hobby as a whole. And I think a lot of these companies are going to have to do something in 2024 as a real standout, this is how we're recognizing the 50th anniversary of not just Dungeons and Dragons again, but the true public marketability of tabletop role playing games. That's what really started in 1974, was that they took something that gamers were doing at their individual tables here and there around mostly the Midwest of the United States, and they made a market for it. That's what they did. I think White Box only published, like, at least initially, like 2,000 copies, and that's all that was sold those first, couple of years, but it was never done before. And so that's what made it clear that, hey, wait a second, there's an actual market for this kind of gaming. And that's when everybody else started jumping in on it. This move and this date coming up is something that I think all of the publishers, both large and independent like yourself, are going to look at 2024 as something where you're going to want to basically go big and get something out there. I mean, I'm looking for the Red Room to score an Any, next year or the year following.
It would be great, but I'm not expecting.
Well, nobody ever expects it, right? At least they're not supposed to. But but at least get some of those, like, small gaming conventions going. Get the hobby moving beyond just one game company having that global game name recognition, which I know it's more than that. I mean, Chaosium is huge outside of the United States. Modifius is really pushing. Free League is really pushing forward. As Paizo was declining, those others are going to kind of fill in that gap. That's the kind of thing. Even the Dungeons and Dragons recognition, even though it's the most recognized, as you say, I think the others are growing faster than it is retaining. If that's a good way of putting it. I think their market share over time is going to shrink as the others grow. There's I forget what they call that. The pie is not infinite, so the market share is not an infinite market share. It's going to ebb and flow within that confined space.
Actually, in my own experience, talking with people on the internet, most people I interact with don't play 5th edition, so they aren't customers anymore. A lot of people don't even buy from Wizards of the Coast because they dislike their approach to gaming. So they have. So it's a bit strange knowing that most people who are role players buy Dungeons and Dragons and Dungeons and
Hmm.
Dragons 5th edition, but most of the people I know, they aren't interested in that, and they have no interest in what's coming up next. But you go on Twitter, and if you just follow those threads that where I usually don't follow them, but
Hmm.
if you if you are going to look for it, most people really are talking about 5th edition, and some people don't even know what's beyond 5th edition. So those aren't people I know. Those are most of them are probably kids, I think, younger,
Right.
much younger role players. But it's a bit strange. I'm I'm always chatting with the same people. I'm not interested in discussing this with strangers and people I don't know, and so it's strange. But,
Yeah.
that's it's obvious that it's Wizards of the Coast is the largest and by far.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in a, here in the United States, we're kind of in a bubble. Anyone connecting to the hobby here in the United States, you can't avoid hearing people talking about fifth edition and, or what Wizards of the Coast is doing next or so. I mean, it's just such evasive, invasive a thing in our, in our spheres. But when you go into the gaming shops, which there are so few left, it's something that's really disappeared, over these last 30 years. I mean, very similar to like how comic stores have shut down widely. I mean, I've followed the hobbies and the adjacent hobbies to collectibles, since the 1980s through, and I followed collectible cards, sports cards, in general, and virtually watched that whole industry collapse under the the misstep of overprinting the number of cards, out there, and the fact that you couldn't build sets after buying 10 boxes of these things. They really outpriced themselves, and then they crushed the rare market of cards by overprinting and such. So I watched that collapse. Then we've watched the comic book industry collapse this past decade or so, and what has been done to the local game shop or the local comic book store, this last decade, or maybe 20 years or so, has been, I mean, it's been a real eye opener. I mean, you walk into these places, and at least in my experience in the few stores that are around me, um 90% of their business is Magic the Gathering, and if they're not selling Magic the Gathering, they're shutting down. They can't, they couldn't survive. I mean, most couldn't survive, COVID and the shutdowns from that.
Yeah,
But the ones that did, I mean, it's it's miniatures and Magic the Gathering. That's the only thing that
that's
floats
interesting
them.
because usually Portugal follows the other countries and things happen
Hmm.
here 20 years after or something. That one was the on reverse. It happened
Yeah,
before here. 20
yeah,
years ago, when there was a big crisis, and well, when Magic the Gathering started to be a thing, a really big thing, the stores were basically selling cards. So it
yeah.
started here a long time ago. I'm not sure how the stores are doing because I haven't been in a store for a long time. There aren't many. There aren't many here, so but I think they almost the same happened. Of course, they closed doors, and probably they still sell some of the well, the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition certainly, and cards
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
but I usually don't. Well, actually, since I never played the most popular games of the time, I've been purchasing from the UK usually for a long time, almost
Right.
since the beginning. Since the early '90s, I started purchasing from UK stores because they
Hmm.
were closest.
Right.
So my experience is buying not online because it wasn't online at the time. It was by fax machine or something like that. But it was buying through the mail, so
Yeah.
expensive. Also, paying the shipping was a bit expensive. I had as it is now, but back there I had some. It was an additional problem to buy things from the UK because we had to pay a lot of
Right.
shipping costs.
Yeah. Commandant VHS here says it could be that WotC faces a new Pathfinder-like situation if the game changes too much from 5.0. Yeah, I think that they might see a split between those that decide to just stay with 5e and those that decide to move on, you know, and go to the more digital presentation and go along those lines. Um, I find their choice in I find their choice in going with the Unreal Engine for their virtual tabletop to be um, either a strange choice or it's a good foretelling of where they're looking to go, because the Unreal Engine is a video game engine. It is not really a tabletop engine. So the fact that they're going with a video game engine tells me that they're possibly looking to go to a more um, a more video game model, and
And the digital format,
the
being the
digital
books
format.
digital format, it all seems like they are changing into a game, role playing game, but computer role playing game,
Yeah, yeah,
not
that they're going to try
tabletop.
to, the Fortnite model of selling skins and
Yes.
selling microtransactions and subscription for certain content and such.
Their
Um,
customers are many customers are young, so they'll probably enjoy that.
yeah. So that'll be very, very interesting. So Agile Monk, good morning or afternoon, depending on your time zone. WotC is a shill for work agendas and monetizing every penny they can, even if they destroy all that was ever great and awesome about D&D. And I've been playing for 48 years. Absolutely. Um, but it's kind of odd. Their agenda does have a political social agenda to it as well, because they could certainly be monetizing their older IPs, and yet they choose not to, because of social agenda rather than making every single penny. I think Hasbro is a little bit more uh, you know penny wise than than WotC might be. um, so yeah, I definitely agree with you that they will try to milk this thing out for everything that it's worth, and I think that they're looking to microtransactions and possibly prescription to do so. Also, hey, thanks a lot for the for the donation of the channel. I always take these things and I immediately convert them over to usually to product for the channel, or just keeping things running. So I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. And let's get to your next comment here. So the last thing we want is WotC to turn D&D into World of Warcraft and or EverQuest. No, I think they're shooting for Fortnite. I think they're shooting for Fortnite. They would, if they were guaranteed Fortnite numbers, they do it in a blink. They do it in a blink. They would remove everything else that they've ever done if they can have what's Fortnite, like 200 million subscribers. You know what I'm saying? They would flip. They would flip in a heartbeat. And even if they sell their character models, for 25 cents. You know what I'm saying? They will make an absolute fortune, and D&D, whatever their virtual tabletop, would become would become on par with what they make from Magic the Gathering. I think they would even out, um, under that model. I mean, I'd have to look to see how much Fortnite actually makes and how many play. It might even be higher than 200 million active players. It might even be 400 or 500 million. I haven't looked at the numbers in quite a while, but I guarantee you that game alone makes billions of dollars a year from transactions. So, um, yeah, Wizards of the Coast would gobble up World of Warcraft money and numbers. World of Warcraft, I think, at its height had about 12 million independent subscribers. So 12 million players. It was making, if it's 12 million, so it was making at $9, I think, at the time. So it was making $120 million a month. I imagine that $120 million a month the game was making when they had their maximum number of subscribers. Um, even if they were playing multiple characters, and so that would throw the numbers off a little bit. Even if it was making a tenth of that, so 12 million a month. That's still far more than what WotC makes now off of 5e. WotC only makes about $120 million a year from 5e content, exclusively 5e content. That's books and other peripheral items. It's only about 7 or 8% overall of Hasbro's total profile. Hey, John. Welcome. Yes, you're still blocked. I have no idea how you're blocked or why you're blocked or whatever. Um, yeah, I don't think that's got to be on your end because there's nothing on my end. So, yeah, for some reason, Legion of Myth cannot log into my YouTube channel directly. He has to use his other account. But welcome. WoW sucked, but EQ was a great MMO. WoW was good for the first 20 levels of each character class. And then after that, it sucked. But, and its community was horrible. Its community was absolutely horrible. So let's go on. Commandant, with the inflation and the economy cooling down, this might be the wrong timing. Yeah, they don't have a good track record for digital content either. I mean, you look at Sword Coast Legends. So their stab at a video game that was one where you could build your own adventures and design your own dungeons for the most part, and customize your characters and do all of that. And that used the Unreal Engine. I'm pretty sure that used the Unreal Engine for that game. And they dropped it after 6 months. 6 months after launch, they decided we're no longer contributing to this, and they severed ties with the company that produced it. It was like they literally used it just as a marketing ploy to sell their adventures into Avernus, Descent into Avernus hardcover. And once either that book didn't do that well, or once the game didn't do well and the book followed, they just dumped the whole project within 6 months. That's what's so sad. If they could be Fortnite, I agree. Yeah. Oh yeah, they would they would dump everything that they ever knew or loved about tabletop role playing if they could turn Fortnite numbers. And that would be a Hasbro choice. That wouldn't even be a WotC choice. They'd have no choice in that matter. Okay, so let's go back to this comment. Yeah, because yeah, remember 4E didn't work out trying to be like Wizards of World of Warcraft. Yeah, I mean that video game model that they tried to do in tabletop role playing format didn't work. But perhaps what they're trying to do now is work the opposite direction. They're trying to take 5e, and make it a video game, which is the exact opposite of what they did with 4e. 4e, they tried to capture that sense of the video game in tabletop format, and that's a pretty tough thing to do. To begin with, first of all, they don't always mirror each other. I think that Modifius released, and I don't know how well it's doing or how well it actually works, but Modifius did Fallout as a tabletop role playing game, and I'm not sure how well that translates. I've been arguing that because they've been dabbling around. Modifius has been dabbling around Elder Scrolls. I'm quite surprised that they haven't tried to release or secure the rights to make an Elder Scrolls tabletop role-playing game. I don't know if they tried. They have
Dishonored also.
Say again?
Dishonored, that game from I don't know, Bethesda, I think.
Yeah, but they do have some connection. They've made a Fallout. Now they've made a Fallout role-playing game. They had the Fallout board game or skirmish game. They have the miniatures and the skirmish game for Elder Scrolls. So they've secured that right, as well. So I'm surprised that they haven't done the transition to making a deal and producing a Fallout role-playing game.
Maybe that's a plan for that.
Yeah, I think that they probably are planning on it. I was surprised that they didn't announce that when Dungeons and Dragons announced their acquisition of D&D Beyond. They both had those premieres on the same day, and I was super let down that Modifius announced they were making some Call of Cthulhu adaptation to a Roman time period. I was like, who the hell asked for that? Nobody asked for that. I was like, of all the things to squander,
because I think there's already a game, an Italian game like that. It's I can't remember the name now, but it was there was a second edition recently. Lex Arcana, I think. Lex Arcana. I think it's called Lex Arcana. I think there is a connection there. It's a Roman time, a Roman period game, and it has some. It's not Call of Cthulhu really, but there are some connections.
Since the comment didn't go through Red Room Blocks,
I agree with him.
Yes, and I agree with him too, because like I said, I mean, you guys have been churning out so much, almost too much. I'm getting to the point where I was like, I had the same problem with Blow Games. I was like, stop already. I can't keep on buying stuff,
Yes, I will slow down.
Yeah, it's like, it was like, but
well, my backlog is exhausted now, so I have to start writing again. Actually, I started this week.
Hello, Derek. Back in the day, video games tried to be D&D, and the isometric games were, it was possible, it was believable, and those were big at the time too, in their own right. And so, and many of those D&D games back in the day, like Baldur's Gate and some of the other ones, I'm drawing a blank now.
There's
Uh,
Planescape.
the Pools of Radiance, and a lot of those games were highly rated games. And then Elder Scrolls games came out, and those were phenomenal, really captured that kind of feel of danger. You had Might and Magic, and EverQuest, and all of those games back then. They had that computer role-playing games were huge. I mean, huge in the late 80s, or through the 90s and into the 2000s. They really did carry the RPG banner through those decades, to be honest. And those were the waning years of both TSR, and then Dungeons and Dragons in general as well. And you really didn't get that big jump again until really the mid to late 2000s, when you just started getting this real big push again in the tabletop hobby, where it's becoming a thing again. It's starting to get to, I think, where it was in the 80s, when as a hobby it was like it was the geek hobby, and I think it's getting back to that to a certain extent, as especially as MMOs have been on a decline. I mean, I tried playing just yesterday. I tried playing Guild Wars 2, its 10th anniversary, and I was like, oh my god! Now I remembered why I left this in 2015. It's like, it just had no appeal
I was
anymore.
never a fan of MMOs.
Yeah.
I played a couple of games, but I didn't really get into it.
Right. So let's see. My TPS website shows Skyrim role-playing game coming out here soon, for what I've seen. Oh, really? All right. So, do you happen to know who's publishing it? It's got to be. It's got to be either Modifius or Free League.
Yeah, it could be Free League.
Yeah.
Are working
Yeah,
together.
it's got to be, or it could be them working together, right? Because I think one does more distribution.
Yeah, it seems like to be that but the old Free League games can be bought at their store, so
Yeah,
they are probably doing the distribution.
Modifius, not my dose. Okay, I hate autocorrect. So. Boatard, thanks for the info on Sisters of the Seven Sins and Sexual Holocaust. Yeah, Sexual Holocaust. That was the one that I was talking about, with the the paper texture of that. I mean, awesome stuff. Scary good reads. Yes, they are absolutely incredible. So,
Thanks.
Let's see. Do creators get more money buying these things from drive-through or other online sites? Well, drive-through takes 30%, correct? Yeah, drive-through
35?
takes 30%, or
I think
it's 35 if you're not exclusive.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
exclusive. So
yeah. You did the move. Which, you know what? I mean, 5% is not a lot to sacrifice to not be exclusive. I mean, that's a conscience play. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well worth the idea of, and hey, who knows what's going to happen to drive through once WotC, I have a feeling that WotC will pull its license, or WotC goes the other way and buys it out, and then you're beholden to WotC. And I guarantee WotC's not going to give you 30%, not only take 30% to publish there. No, they'll take more. Yeah, your wife still plays. Yeah, I literally I just played it yesterday. I even recorded like the first 35 minutes of it or so, and I was wondering whether to put it on the channel just to celebrate its 10th anniversary and just to diversify the channel a little bit by putting some, because it is supposed to be any platform. I'm supposed to put out stuff from computer RPGs as well. But oof, I was like, wow, this is really, it looks old, first of all. So it looks 10 years old. And it just played 10 years old too. So I was like, I didn't enjoy it. I'd rather find a different game that I'm like, wow, this is, something unique and new and, interesting to put out there. The last MMO I played and thoroughly enjoyed was Warhammer Online until first only expansion ruined the game. Yeah, a lot of the expansions tended to ruin games as well. I mean, Star Wars Galaxies was destroyed by its first expansion. Jump to Lightspeed screwed it and never went back to being better than it was. It was glitchy as hell, but its expansion ruined it. I'm from Chicago. Our mobsters, loan sharks don't give us 35%.
Well, the Big Geek Emporium has a slightly lower value. I think it's a bit lower. So
Yeah, but there, again, that's that gets back to the premise of this live stream was to talk about what what do we all need to start doing before or in time for 2024, and that is to further expand the hobby. And one of the ways of expanding the hobby is like what Biggest Geekus has done in creating the Big Geek Emporium, is to further diversify where you can go to get to get these independently published or self-published tabletop role-playing materials, where you're not beholden to going to drive through or confine yourself to the restrictions and limitations that the DM's Guild has, or to or to only deal with like Lulu or any of those other self-publishers. I forget some of the
yeah,
other
Lulu
ones.
is a big problem. It could never, or at least not now, be an alternative to drive through because people go there just to buy your things, your stuff. They
Yeah,
don't go there browsing for games. So you don't sell there because someone found you. People,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. So you can just search on it and
yeah,
find something there.
it's not good for that, and I
Yeah,
don't think people go there for that anyway.
yeah, yeah. Elder Scrolls. I mean, EverQuest TTRPG. It's third edition. Still have the books. Quite decent in my opinion. Yeah, third edition is one of the editions that they say was actually not bad. I mean, I have it. I've never played it. Never actually read it. I just have it so I could say I have every core, the core three rule books of all the editions of Dungeons and Dragons. Um, let's see. Let's get back to a banner real quick and see if we can spark and get back on to. Um, so let's see. Yeah, so that we were kind of hitting on this. The OSR and other publishers are how might they commemorate the 50th anniversary? And we're kind of talking about that. I think just kind of expand beyond what what the OSR is currently doing, and just try to get a bigger piece of the pie, I guess. Get more of the market share by continuing to um by continuing to produce that, or be that source of variety, innovation, and cost, accessibility. I mean, I actually had this as a bullet point to throw up there. The OSR, which includes the independent smaller publishers, must continue to be a source of variety, innovation, and cost accessible content. Um, there are very, very few OSR publishers out there that are putting out, PDFs for $30, or $40 or $50. I mean, that's some of the older PDFs that Wizards of the Coast puts out there. I mean, you can get their fifth edition, player's handbook that was produced in 2015 or even 14. It's still $29 as PDF. I'm like, what? It's like, why would you still have that price point on these things that are, that are 7 years old at this point, when you can get entire game systems from most OSR, publishers, entire game systems for $10. It's like, it just amazes me that the OSR is not seen as, as the real go-to place for new modern players, considering the economy, which someone else already mentioned above, and spoke about, with the rising inflation and just in general, people not getting out there, in person as much anymore as we used to. There's probably less, at the table, at the game store, at the, live play, or in-person play than there was previously. And having access to low-cost materials, whether it be print or PDF, is just more of a hallmark, I think, of the OSR than of the big publishers.
It's inexpensive, but it seems that when we are trying to promote, from a certain point on, we hit the wall.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get to more people. People just ignore us. Even if they see a post about something, publicity, whatever, they ignore. I have the feeling that, or they just don't. It just doesn't come under the radar, or people ignore it.
Yeah.
I can remember not long ago when I was just a customer, and I was really aware of most independent publishers. I knew a couple of games. I knew a couple of publishers. I remember that I knew Venger before the others, because Alpha Blue has a very weird cover, I think.
Yeah.
So it stuck on my mind, and I knew also Grim James games because I
Right.
some research of horror games frequently, so I found them. But maybe it depended, I'm not sure. But there are most of the other publishers I didn't know about them. So
Right.
most of those people viewed, so it doesn't come under the radar of most people who are just consuming mainstream games.
Right. Well, I just saw a video from Questing Beast. All right, so Questing Beast is a YouTube channel, fairly large. I think he has about 50,000 subscribers, and he was talking about generating a blog or something, just talking about the OSR and actually reaching out and showing, like, these are the OSR games that are out there, or these are the ones that are being talked about. These are the ones you should look into and such, and create kind of like a blog as a service to add to that exposure, and I think if some of the larger YouTube channels do diversify, some of them are. I mean, some of them are fairly large, and they don't just do 5e content. They do cover a lot of the different games that are out there and different game companies and different genres than just the one. And yeah, if they all jumped on board and just talked more about the OSR in general, then I think that kind of exposure will get out there, especially since YouTube has changed their algorithms and their ways of getting things. I've seen more views and more subscribers coming on now over these last 2 months or so since they've made some changes than I had in the past. And and that's another way of um, generating more knowledge of the OSR is by our putting our channels out there and doing a lot more content that focuses on the OSR, but still tags every once in a while to the big games, because that's how you're gonna draw more to finding your channel and then finding your products and stuff as well. And that's the full court press I'm talking about for like 2024. That's what I think the OSR and the independent game publisher scene, and the big guys, all need to look at 2024 as that year that's super important for the hobby across the board and really push the hobby. I mean, is the hobby ever going to overtake video games? No. You know what I'm saying? Or even board games? No. But could it become much larger than it currently is today? Absolutely. I think it can become much larger than it actually is today, but only if it kind of looks at doing that. It's not enough just to sustain. I think that it has to grow, and and I look at that internally as well. The OSR needs to be a bigger part of the pie than it currently is.
Yeah, I agree with that because even even those larger channels, those larger YouTube channels, they talk about other games, just not just the fifth edition, but not that many. So
Hmm.
they talk about Modifius games, they talk about Call of Cthulhu and Free League and a couple of other publishers, but that's not a real diversity, a real variety of things. There are genres that are never talked about,
Hmm.
and certainly the OSR, the small publishers are all excluded. So I think if people knew about it, they probably would buy not my games, but some of the larger. Well, in the smaller, the
Yeah,
larger, the
yeah,
smallest. So those who have some dependent, for example, that's he probably has already much more a bigger audience than probably the other independent publishers, but still, it doesn't. He doesn't get attention from those guys, and probably he doesn't get attention for other reasons.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, he's
There's political reasons, and
yeah, political reasons. I mean, he has a decent sized channel himself, but he's you know, yeah, he has political reasons why they're not there. So I mean, same thing with like Venture. I mean,
yeah,
Venture is going to have that struggle to get over. Grim Jim has the same issue too, right? It's like there are people. Grim Jim has probably been producing stuff longer than either of the other two. I think Grim Jim is
yeah,
has
probably
probably been publishing longer than Pundit has. I could be wrong, but I
maybe
think that
he's yeah. Well, at least
um,
for himself.
yeah. So there's I mean, they're good examples to show like people who are like almost like self-sustaining their hobby as a profession. Like I don't think that I mean Venture probably not at that
Yeah,
point
yeah,
yet,
yes, he has a job.
yeah, he has a job. So it's like, but I know Pundit says that that's his only thing. He just does his publishing and he publishes a lot. I'm sure that you're getting close to that point too, where you're publishing so much. It's almost a full-time job, if not,
No,
you know.
it's already a full time job.
Oh, it's
Uh,
already a full-time job. Yeah.
it's
So
only possible because I live in Portugal,
yeah.
and so if I lived in let's say the US, I couldn't do that. And well,
Yeah.
the planet lives in Uruguay, so it's probably I
Yeah.
don't know.
I'm sure there's some place in like the Ozarks or something that way you could do, like
Yeah,
Tennessee
maybe,
or
perhaps,
uh,
perhaps.
yeah. Um, but anyway, so let's see where we're going to wrap up because I have about 5 more minutes left, and let's see what I wanted to do. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to the very first comment that I was putting out there and kind of set this up. So, beginning next week, I'm looking to certainly change over this segment of the OSR tabletop. Will be regularly scheduled feature. So on Wednesdays from 11:30 to 1 p.m. That's what I'm looking to do Eastern time. And topics will be announced on Sunday, the Sunday before. So so what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start really crafting these things and not the 4 hours notice. Hey, I'm going live. Unless something like really huge happens. But I'm looking to do this on a more regular basis and and bring more guests on or have scheduled guests and actually speak about topics that I think are revolving around the OSR, and always in the for the purpose of expanding the OSR, expanding its reach, expanding people's awareness of the OSR, and also focusing on particular OSR publishers out there, particularly the small ones, such as the Red Room. And, I'm glad to have you on and to, direct people to your products. And once the thing goes, totally public on my channel, I'll put um, links to, so I know you sell on the Big Geek Emporium, so I'll certainly put a link there, as well as drive through because you're still on drive through. You haven't
Yeah,
been completely
we must.
exiled.
Oh no, we
So,
must. Well, there will be books that will probably I can sell there,
yeah,
but we can't go and get out of that unless they kick us out
yeah,
because there's a big difference between what we sell at drive-through and the rest.
yeah. No, I fully understand that, and it's it's such a silly thing that they've been doing. I will say that part of my editorial is that, I mean, if you're putting stuff in the adults section, the mature section, I should say, the mature section of drive-through, then there should be a lot more leeway and flexibility,
That's right. It seems
in that
the mature
place.
label has no meaning.
Yeah,
The only
yeah,
thing that you say this is mature, the only thing that happens that's it won't show up in your feed when you are buying things. But
right.
you can put there anything else. Just I don't know what I don't know where to draw the line. I don't think that they know either. They just
Yeah, yeah.
if someone complains, they will check it.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. I mean, there should be, and I've said this before, there should be a ramification for filing frivolous complaints.
Yeah,
And if someone, if it's a repeat person that keeps on filing these frivolous, and then they look back and they say, listen, it's in a mature area, there's nothing that makes this against our terms of service, and this is the second or third time that you, a user, have reported something against the same person or same publisher, and now either, first step is we're going to ignore any future complaints of yours, or if they continue doing it, like they're really harassing you, then they say, well, we're going to block you from coming to drive through. Recently there was a person on the Twitter account of Gamehole, the Gamehole convention, that that they the person was saying not to allow Venture to play to run games there. It was like, are you seriously going to let Venture run? And Gamehole actually looked at the person's profile and said, well, we haven't noticed that you've ever attended our convention before. And it doesn't look like you're attending it this year. So, thank you for your concerns, but, we're not going to do anything further. I mean, they went into much more detail, but they pointed out the fact that this guy had never been to their convention and wasn't planning on being at their convention, and they were just disregarding him. They were throwing out his objection.
That makes sense like that.
And
that people that were offended by sexual holocaust, well, they weren't really offended. They said it because it was right after it was released. So it's not possible that someone was just browsing and who had the mature, because you can shield yourself against mature themes. If you don't choose that option, they will never appear on your screen. So I would understand if it was something like my kid saw that or something like that. Even though the book itself, the book has no visual contents that can be offensive. It's written, so you'd have to read it, not just browse through it. So anyway, but it wasn't like that. It was just someone who went there just to say these guys are bad people.
No, they went in there with ill intent. Probably specifically looked for it, and Okay, well, thank you, Miguel, very much, and thank you for all of you that joined in. And special thank you to Agile Monk. Once again, thank you very much for your contribution. I will definitely take that $9.99 and put it towards buying some content for the channel, and you will see that. So as always, thanks everyone for joining in. And remember, starting next week, this will be a regular feature of the channel. So every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time until roughly 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, I will be hosting a live stream, having content creators such as Miguel come in, and hopefully others will see this and decide, hey, I want to come in as well. And I'll also be bringing up topics, and I'll release that list of topics Sunday nights for the next Wednesday's show. So you have some heads up of that. So as always, look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. Miguel, good luck. You and Sylvia, good luck with all that you guys are producing.
And thank you for the invite.
Yes, I'm certainly looking forward to digging into Wretched Space, because I've been looking for a really cool space space-based RPG that
I hope you like it.
Yeah, ads. I'm sure that I will, but I will. I'll look through it, and I'll probably do a review for that within the next couple of days. I always like to have a physical in my hand first, but but you just churn out too much stuff so fast that I have to just go with the PDF for maybe a couple of them. So so I will be doing a review of the quick start for that within the next couple of days. And I know someone else sent me a solo play PDF that he wanted me to take a look at. So I have to get that squeezed in over the next couple of days as well. So I have to get ready to go to work. So everyone else, have a great day, and keep on gaming.
Bye.
All right.